Are you decent?
Hold on. Okay.
Well, that was a mortifying sermon today.
Oh, come on. Can't we have one good night?
You know the Reverend was referring to you not wanting Shapey.
On some level, I think I always understood that these hands of mine were clumsy, not clever. And I tried to do the best that I could, but try as I might, I couldn't bring myself to hold you.
Hi, welcome to Moralton University. I'm Lauren, and I'm here with Wes, Senna, and Glam. Today we'll be talking about the youngest member of the Puppington family and the second coming of Christ, Shapey. This is the fourth installment in our Picking Apart the Puppington series. Those aren't required viewing for this video, but we do recommend checking out our Bloberta analysis, as well as our last video where we analyzed Shapey's real father, Danielle Stopframe. Shapey is among my favorite characters, and one I have a particular soft spot for. At first glance, he seems to just be a comic relief, but his character has a surprising amount of depth. Like many characters, his development was stifled by the show's cancellation, and we unfortunately lost the Shapey-centric episode that was supposed to be in Season 3.
Shapey Puppington, who is voiced by creator Dino Stamatopoulos' daughter Tigger, is first introduced to the audience as Oral Puppington's mischievous 7-year-old brother. He acts several years younger than his age, and there is a running gag where he screams at Bloberta for a drink, which means that he wants to be breastfed. His vocabulary is limited to a few words and phrases, so he typically communicates through screams and physical violence. His affinity for dangerous objects and apparent immunity to pain and injury is another notable running gag. He is frequently seen playing with things like lighters, pesticides, and power tools, and in one scene he is even shown sticking knitting needles in his eyes. Though he is often used for comic relief, Shapey is also central to one of the most interesting conflicts in Moral Oral, Bloberta's infidelity and the dissolution of the Puppingtons' marriage. Clay and Bloberta nearly divorced at the end of Season 1 because of Clay's longtime suspicion that he isn't Shapey's father. It is heavily implied that his real father is Danielle Stopframe due to their physical resemblance and Shapey's affinity for him, and this is eventually confirmed in the episode Numb. Shapey also plays a significant role in Bloberta's character development and Oral's ongoing relationship with Christina. When the Puppingtons meet the Posabules, a family that closely mirrors their own, Shapey is accidentally swapped with his counterpart Block. He is then absent for the latter half of Season 2 because the Posabules move away and take him with them. Oral visits Christina under the pretense of returning Block and retrieving Shapey, but the swap never ends up happening. Shapey is only brought home when Bloberta is looking through old photos and finally notices that the child screaming at her doesn't look like Danielle.
From his obvious lack of physical resemblance to his inability to make meaningful emotional connections, Shapey is the black sheep of the family. Shapey has very little he can call his own. He doesn't have a comfortable bedroom filled with toys. He sleeps on a bare mattress in what is essentially a storage room for unwanted things. He doesn't even appear to have his own toothbrush, since only 3 are seen in the Puppington bathroom, and have colors that respond to Clay, Bloberta, and Oral. This lack of belonging extends to his relationship. Clay has no interest in forging a connection with Shapey because he suspects he isn't his son and didn't want another child to begin with. They seem to have a mutual discomfort with each other. Clay does not interact with Shapey except for a few rare moments in church, and Shapey screams when Clay does something like touch his hair. Clay is also frustrated by Shapey's toddler-like behavior and Bloberta's failure to wean him. Unlike Clay, Oral clearly cares about Shapey. He is patient with Shapey when he screams and lashes out, plays with him, and does his best to look after him. He's also the only one who realizes and cares that Shapey has been swapped with Block. However, Oral's relationship with Shapey isn't a close one. He is often too busy with his own problems and misadventures to notice Shapey, and the attention he shows to his little brother is mainly driven by his Christianity and devotion to God. He is the most attentive and caring towards Shapey when he incorrectly believes he is the second coming of Christ. Oral is also fundamentally unable to understand Shapey, since he is wanted and seen within both their family and their community in a way that Shapey never has. Meanwhile, despite often being violent with him, Shapey looks up to Oral. In love, Shapey steals Oral's lucky Bible and imitates reading passages from it. Shapey has no relationship with his biological father, Danielle Stopframe. Danielle does not acknowledge that Shapey is his son or provide any support to him, although Shapey seems to have an innate knowledge that Danielle is his father. At most, Danielle thinks Shapey is cute. but this may come from a place of vanity since Shapey looks exactly like him.
Shapey's most significant relationship is with his mother, Bloberta. Many of his scenes involve him hanging around her while she cleans or knits, observing her conversations with Oral or Clay, or begging to be breastfed. Please note that we discussed Bloberta's relationship with Shapey at length in our video, A Doll's House, which focused on Bloberta's character and motivations. In this video, we will be examining the relationship from Shapey's perspective and how he's impacted by Bloberta's parenting, or lack thereof. Shapey's strong attachment to Bloberta is evident from the very beginning of the show. He is most rowdy when he's trying to get her attention, and he's rarely seen without her. However, despite his attachment to Bloberta, it is largely one-sided. While Shapey's entire world seems to revolve around her, Bloberta can barely look at him because of the shame she feels about her affair. Shapey's love for Bloberta in the face of her apathy is one of the most striking aspects of his character. No matter how many times she scolds him, ignores him, or sprays him with a water bottle, he still adores her and wants to be around her. He craves her love and clings to the only form of affection she gives him, breastfeeding. Breastfeeding has been the strongest bond between Shapey and Bloberta since he was born. And before Oral, one of the first things Bloberta does after giving birth is breastfeed, and he remains latched onto her for most of the episode. Breastfeeding is often one of the first ways a mother connects with her child, since the production of oxytocin during breastfeeding can help foster a bond between them. Later on, as the child grows and is eventually weaned, the mother and child are able to form emotional bonds in different ways. This could be from the mother telling the child she loves them, listening to the child, playing together, and spending time with them without distractions. As Shapey got older, Bloberta could not bring herself to do these things. Instead, she continues to treat him like a baby and uses breastfeeding as their primary form of connection. From her end, it's likely that she does not want to wean him because she likes the feeling of being needed and helpful. Since Clay does not want her, and Oral is closer to Clay, Shapey is the only one who can make her feel that way. Meanwhile, Shapey equates breastfeeding with love for his mother. His resistance to being weaned and constant demands for a drink are his way of preventing the loss of her maternal warmth. This creates a kind of codependency between them. Shapey makes Bloberta feel valuable, and Bloberta makes Shapey feel secure and loved. Their codependent cycle is broken when Shapey is swapped with Block. While Bloberta is still having her needs fulfilled by Block, Shapey is left without his mother. It is unclear what life was like for Shapey in the Posabule household, but it's very likely that he did not form an attachment to Poppet in the way that Block did with Bloberta. This is supported by Shapey eagerly running to Bloberta when she goes to get him, but Block keeps clinging to Bloberta instead of going back to his mother. What we do know for certain is that being separated from Bloberta allowed Shapey to discover that breastfeeding isn't really what he needs. He isn't thirsty. He's craving a genuine emotional connection with his mother. He isn't a baby anymore. He does not want to be treated as a helpless thing that can be placated with milk. He wants to be seen and loved by her as a human being, as her son. For most of the series, Shapey has been unable to understand or articulate this need. It isn't until Sacrifice that he finally tells Bloberta that being thirsty is the same as how he feels when he's alone. This is also the first time he calls her Mommy.
Milk. When I'm thirsty, it feels how I feel when I'm alone.
What?
As we mentioned earlier, Shapey is 7 years old at the beginning of the series and would likely be 8 years old at the end. However, Shapey's behavior doesn't align with the typical developmental milestones for a child his age. According to the CDC, children aged 6 to 8 typically are able to dress themselves and tie their shoes, exhibit independence from parents and family, display awareness of the world around them and their place in it, care about developing meaningful friendships, experience significant and rapid development of mental skills, learn new, better ways to talk about thoughts, feelings, and experiences, and shift focus from themselves to others. Shapey has not reached the majority of these milestones. It is unclear if he is able to dress himself and tie his shoes, but Oral bringing his clothes to him in Best Christmas Ever suggests that he may have been the one to dress him. He is almost entirely dependent on Bloberta and shows no signs of wanting to detach himself from her in any way. Shapey's world is very insular, centering mostly on his own needs and Bloberta, and he has little connection to the rest of Morrilton. He does not go to school or interact with friends like Oral does. His toddler-like behavior and inability to communicate clearly indicate that he is developmentally delayed. We want to dig into the factors that might explain why he is developmentally delayed, and to do so we have to think about nature versus nurture. A lot of people believe that Shapey is autistic. There is some evidence for this, particularly his difficulty with speech. However, I think there are other explanations that make more sense contextually. It's also important to note that autism and developmental delays are not synonymous. Developmental delays can be present in autistic children, but not all children with developmental delays are autistic. There are many causes of developmental delays in children, so we'll go through some of the most plausible ones here. Developmental delays can be caused by exposure to toxins, either before or after birth. We know that Bloberta has an extensive collection of hardcore cleaning supplies, so Shapey could have been exposed to these in utero or as a newborn. It's also possible he was born prematurely, since that is associated with developmental delays. However, this theory isn't supported by anything in the show. One explanation that is particularly interesting is that Shapey sustained brain trauma as a result of a birth injury during delivery. Since Dr. Potterswheel left Bloberta to deliver the baby herself, it is possible that Shapey was injured with the forceps or as Bloberta guided him through the birth canal. Additionally, Shapey does not cry after birth. A newborn not crying can be caused by birth-related brain trauma, but it's important to note there are many causes for a lack of crying, including some that are completely benign. Shapey's developmental delays may also be a product of his environment. Shapey receives no support from Clay or Danielle, and Bloberta is, at best, a neglectful parent. She avoids looking at Shapey, fails to foster a safe or enriching environment, and withholds all physical or emotional connection except breastfeeding. There is extensive research indicating that enduring adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, as a child can affect health and well-being across the entire lifespan. There are many different ACEs, including growing up in an unstable household and having an abusive and/or neglectful parent. According to the New Jersey Pediatric Neuroscience Institute, ACEs can affect brain development in 4 major areas: stress responses, emotional regulation, learning and memory, and brain structure. Consequences of these changes in brain development include behavioral problems, emotional dysregulation, and developmental delays, all of which Shapey exhibits throughout the show. Ultimately, it is likely that Shapey's developmental delays are a product of both nature and nurture. Shapey shows toddler-like behaviors for almost the entire show, but he demonstrates a newfound ability to communicate his feelings of loneliness to Bloberta at the end of Sacrifice. Because of the way the show's cancellation affected the Season 3 timeline, it's not clear exactly how much Shapey's mental and communication skills have developed at this point. Based on Bloberta's shocked reaction, that was probably the first full sentence he has ever said in front of her. Season 3 was supposed to include an episode about Shapey and Block's relationship and the ways in which they nurture each other. There is no other information about what this episode would have entailed. Personally, I would have liked to see an episode where Shapey and Block learn and develop as a result of the support and warmth created by their bond with each other. Block is Shapey's first real friend and the only person who can truly understand how he feels, so it would have been really special to watch them grow together.
Okay. All right. We gonna crack it open. Let's crack it open. Someone crack it open like an egg. Make Miss Censored all proud.
Knowledge is knowing that Shapey is not Clay's son. Wisdom is knowing that he kind of is Clay's son, just based on some of the behaviors he's picked up.
Yeah. Yeah, like you guys pointed out that Shapey's relationship with Clay is not Clay. Shapey's relationship with Bloberta is really similar to the relationship that Clay had with Angela. I mean, like, obviously Angela and Bloberta, like, they're different. Like, Angela, like, is constantly doting on Clay, whereas, like, Bloberta,
because Shapey was being breastfed, but then, like, we kind of concluded that Clay might have not been breastfed, and that because of that they have, like, inverse versions of an oral fixation.
Yeah, because Angela, we know that she didn't drink or smoke during her pregnancy with Clay, but she did so much with her past pregnancies that it's obviously the reason that she miscarried, and that had to have some long-term effects on her ability to breastfeed. So I would say that it's entirely plausible that Clay was never breastfed.
yeah,
Maybe
I can see that.
maybe it would be one second. I have a Wikipedia screenshot. Maybe it'd be helpful for me to read that for people who haven't heard the concept before. So, the infant who is neglected, insufficiently fed, or who is overprotected, overfed, in the course of being nursed might become an orally fixated person, and we can include the screenshot like on screen when we do this part. This fixation might have 2 effects. 1, the neglected child might become a psychologically dependent adult, continually seeking the oral stimulation denied in infancy, thereby becoming a manipulative person in fulfilling their needs, rather than maturing to independence. The overprotected child might resist maturation and return to dependence upon others in fulfilling their needs. Theoretically, oral stage fixations are manifested as garrulousness, talkativeness, smoking, continual oral stimulus, eating chewing objects, and alcoholism. And if you look at Clay and Shapey, Clay is simultaneously underfed and overprotected, whereas Shapey is overfed and underprotected. In a way, Shapey isn't just a reminder to Clay of the broken marriage in this home that he has, very little control over. He's almost like a mirror, like a fun house mirror, because they're very similar, but there's something that's obviously very different and off. And the mention of the talkativeness there is very interesting because I think a lot of people would say, like, oh, Shapey doesn't really say that many words, but he does talk a lot. It's just the same word over and over. He's saying what he knows how to say.
That's very true, yeah.
He does say a lot.
Speaking of, we can cut this and move it around if this is out of place. I was just thinking about the conversation we had the other night. When Shapey does finally speak, the sentence that he says to Bloberta, I would say for somebody who usually says 1 or 2 words, it's very advanced. So I am personally of the belief that he does talk to himself quite a bit. That and his imitation of oral, I think it would just, come about at some point that he was talking to himself, which would display a budding self-awareness, like a budding sense of discipline.
Some children do that at like the toddler stage where they talk to themselves when no one's looking.
Yeah.
And are just waiting to talk.
Yeah. It might have been something he was doing a lot at the Posabules.
Oh, yeah. Maybe
True.
So.
I wonder if that
we don't
really
know what went
bothered
down there, so he might have been, had a lot of time by himself and talked to himself a lot.
I wonder if that really bothered Poppet.
It's almost possible that Christina could have tried to, like, mommy him for a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
True.
Because, the roles are quite different. Like, she's not gonna be going on hunting trips with her father or anything like that. She's just gonna be at home doing the girl things.
I mean, on the other hand, Block doesn't show the same level of like talkativeness that Shapey did in that moment. So I don't know if her presence was like the factor.
That's true as well. Yeah.
Yeah. It could have been more just like separation from Bloberta, like, made him really, really feel alone. And so he was, entertaining himself and talking to himself and kind of being forced to grow in a way that he hadn't before.
So, Bloberta, was revealed to have put off weaning him for like a full 7 years.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Off topic, that seems to be a theme in Dino's works for some reason, because that was also in a show called High School USA, and that kid was like the opposite of Shapey, but yeah. But it shows that Bloberta's like hesitant to let him grow or show those signs of independence. As long as she sees him like a baby, she can keep him relying on her and always feel helpful and always feel needed.
Yeah.
It's interesting in the sense of the other big event that people associate with Bloberta, because Shapey has like a full set of teeth at this point. He's 7 years old. She has to be like, there's some chafing, bleeding going on there like all the time.
Oh, no. I was actually reading when I was doing a little bit of research for the script. I guess in certain cultures, like where there's less pressure for weaning to occur at like an early age, sometimes children do breastfeed up to like 7 years old, but that's not a norm for like American culture. So Shapey's obviously very atypical in that sense, but in other cultures that is the thing that happens.
It's also, in contrast, like, one of the reasons that I feel that Moral Oral doesn't take place in the 50s is that Bloberta does breastfeed Shapey, so at the very least it would take place in the 70s, but there are other reasons to say that it takes place in the present day. But mainly, in the 50s, women were actually discouraged from breastfeeding their children, and it became more common to encourage mothers to use formula to feed their children.
Why was that?
One of the reasons I think was that people thought it was like a lower class thing to do, or that it was dirty, or that, sometimes it would be, you're just not good at producing milk, so you might as well just use the formula.
That makes a lot of sense, because this was, the civil rights movement was not like fully in swing yet, and slavery was even more recent in history at that point than it is in the modern day. And wet nurses were very much a thing. You would hand your baby to another woman, and she would be the one feeding and taking care of it.
That's true.
So it's almost like they think, oh, breastfeeding my baby is what an enslaved person would do.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh. I'm going to circle back to something really quick, because I did look it up because I was interested with the possibility of Clay not being breastfed. So we know like Angela's an older parent because she's had 10 miscarriages up to that point. So she has to be probably at least like 40, I would say. So I was reading this article on the Lactation Network that says the question is, are there any complications of breastfeeding over 35 years old? And it says moms over 35 years old don't necessarily have any different or greater complications with breastfeeding than a younger mom would. That being said, it's helpful to be aware of a few potential challenges related to milk supply. One study found first-time mothers who were 30 years old or older were more likely to have a delay in their milk coming in after delivery. If the reason you're having a baby later in life is because of fertility challenges that stem from hormonal or medical issues, those conditions could also affect your milk production. And sometimes high-risk pregnancies can lead to a more complicated delivery, which in turn may delay or lower your milk supply. So I think it's very likely that Clay either wasn't breastfed or was breastfed very little.
No,
I don't know how super relevant this is. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I think it was just maybe a plot point to like get it out of the way. But in this scene, we see a nesting. Clay eats like very little and then just pushes his plate away, if I'm recalling correctly.
Talking about passing?
Yeah.
Passing, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, he's also drinking milk.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we know he's, I feel like I'm not trying to be like, well, I feel like Angela would have. I feel like Angela would have been the type of mom.
Another aspect of the whole, not breastfeeding your child thing is that, skin to skin contact in like infancy is like integral to forming, these important relationships with your parent. If like there was basically a whole generation of people who were, kind of confined from experiencing that closeness with their parents. So that kind of showed in the coming generations as they grew older. So when we think of baby boomers being kind of sociopathic, you know why.
Yeah.
You know why.
Yeah. A good point. And it is also interesting just like knowing that skin to skin contact, that breastfeeding can also contribute to, like, Shapey and Bloberta had so much skin to skin contact, and you'd think that would make them really, really close, and they'd have this a really like enmeshed relationship, like more like Clay and Angela had, but they don't. Like, they're still like codependent in that way of like breastfeeding makes Bloberta feel needed. Shapey,
I mean, that's the other extreme of it.
Yeah. Yeah, but he's been that, instead of like that helping them develop like the beginning of a bond that's greater than that, that's still all they have at 7 years of age for Shapey.
And even though she doesn't really like engage with him, he's always constantly wanting to be around her, even when he's playing with these dangerous objects, and you think he'd want to do that. I mean, he knows that they're not going to get taken away, but he's at a young enough age where he might still have an inkling of, oh, I see other kids get so they're not supposed to be playing with taken away from them by their parents. But no, he's doing this right next to Bloberta all the time. And it's especially poignant, I think, when it's the knitting needles that he sticks into his eye, because it almost reminds me of how, people get their cats little laptops because the cats want to be always doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
No, he wants to feel connected to her, and
Aw.
she's so resistant to that. And he
But,
seems
you
to
know,
be
he
trying to get
knows-
like a rise out of her a lot of the time, and she doesn't respond. And like she has set up as his bedroom the storage room where there's like sharp objects, power tools, like all these dangerous things that could hurt him, and she just doesn't care.
I just feel
And
like,
which is, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I just feel like she doesn't have like the emotional capacity to properly take care of him in the state that she's in. And it's like, it's not
No.
an excuse for what she's doing by any means, but it's like, they just can't form that connection. Like, obviously there's a barrier there where it's like, it can only be like at the baseline level of, you know, that mother to child bond in the most, you know, I guess, broken down, I don't know how to say it, like the most raw way
I mean, like that back to that, you know, kind of mirroring of the, it's like an inverse oral fixation where Clay has one version of it and Shapey has another version of it. And so in Clay's case, he doesn't know how to, you know, form these meaningful bonds with other people. But Shapey, the minute that he's able to vocalize it, he goes to Bloberta and he asks for it. He describes his feelings very clearly. You know, in a way, Shapey does mirror Clay's insatiety and his orally fixated behaviors. We hear him exclaiming drink and yummy and cake. Food and drink can often be a substitute for physical love. With the drinking behavior, you know, example, the breastfeeding in this situation, it serves as an act that produces both nourishment and a source of physical warmth and comfort. So, you know, in Sacrifice, when we see Clay go on this long rant at Forgetty's pub, Shapey speaks his first coherent sentence. He says, "When I'm thirsty, it feels how I feel when I'm alone." And the simplicity of the statement shows like how cognizant and attentive he is, you know, so much more than his family has given him credit for, especially with regards to his loneliness and how he feels. And the line, it serves as this reflection of Clay's own feelings in that bar, you know, falling to pieces, like falling to his knees literally and crying out. You know, his feelings about alcohol, even, you know, when he's thirsty, it's because he's alone. You know, his craving to drink is a way of trying to socially lubricate himself, which we saw in Help, you know, to make up for his feelings of alienation.
That's so interesting. If with the whole like the Wikipedia definition of oral fixation, they bring up how when a person with an oral fixation kind of has their needs met, quote unquote, that they tend to regress.
Okay. Yeah, he was exhibiting a lot of regressive behavior in the bar scene in Sacrifice.
Because he's doing the same. He's seeking out the kind of the corporal affection, to kind of coin a fucked up term here, that he sought from his father. He's like reaching back to the farthest back of his childhood coping mechanisms at this point because the drinking isn't working anymore.
Yeah.
And sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you know, that episode, like, we really see Clay is like stuck in this desperation for like connection that he's using alcohol to fill, and like he's like a full grown man, he's like 40 years old and he's stuck there, he doesn't know how to get out of it. And at the same time we're seeing Shapey, who's probably might still be 7, maybe 8 years old at this time. He's finding the words to vocalize how he feels, and now he's doing the work and the reflection needed to try to change his situation, which is something that Clay hasn't been capable of doing. So it feels like a very hopeful moment for Shapey.
Yeah, when you
and
put it
that he might be
way.
able to move forward in some way, whether it be by strengthening his relationship with Bloberta, which I think is going to be much more challenging on her end because she's got so much work she needs to do and reflection that she, as of that point, has not done. But Shapey might be able to find some kind of kind of comfort and meaning for himself.
What a beautiful ending! Like, what a beautiful ending to juxtapose both Clay and Shapey in that situation, and kind of show that, in fact, Shapey has, you know, found a way to you know, vocalize his needs, unlike, you know, the man who is barely raising him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes it so like impactful, honestly, when you think about it that way.
Yeah.
Shapey is just so like beyond his years, empathetic and compassionate. And speaking of Bloberta, a thought I had about his level of observance. With him, he shouts a lot, which is a very normal behavior for a child. They shout because it's how they get attention and communicate. But we see that sometimes when Bloberta is alone or with Shapey by her side, which she would consider being alone because, you know, he's sort of an extension of herself, she yells, like during the yarn scene. So I wonder if that's another behavior that he's taken on to almost kind of show his mom, like, look, mommy, we're sharing a hobby.
Oh. You know, that's a good point. Like, yeah, we don't really get to see a lot of Bloberta alone. Like, we see like little scenes, and then obviously Numb is a whole episode about her on her own. But yeah, you know, that's interesting that she kind of does those like little outbursts.
I think a lot of
the way they
Bloberta's
talk to themselves in that way too. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is just speculation, but I think of a lot of Bloberta's feelings towards Shapey might stem from kind of the similar as Clay, where he's a mirror to his parents. Shapey is the unwanted, unseen child, just like she was. His room is almost like her room is filled with like personal garbage, but there was some dangerous stuff in there too. Like she had her flask. We believed that there's like a cigarette and an ashtray in there.
Yeah, I thought them to be more so personal items, but you could argue that some of the boxes are not her things. Like you could or you couldn't, but like it's similar enough in a way where like the disarray of it all, there has to be some sort of parallel there. Like there has to be some sort. I mean, maybe I'm looking into it too much, but like I just feel like that represents a lot because it's almost like she's treating that room the same way that she would treat her childhood room. So it's almost like it's showing a reflection of like her, I guess, like the things that she wasn't able to address as a child, like when she moved into and I guess she wasn't a child there, but like, you know what I'm trying to say, like when she was younger, you know, she didn't get to really learn how to properly grow past those emotions. She just learned how to kind of like bottle them up inside. So she never really like grew past what she was in Help. She just kind of learned how to mask it.
Yeah.
And
that's a great point.
I feel like Shapey's room is like just kind of like shows that she has not fully grown past it. She's not spotless, and Shapey is like that black spot in her life in a way, but also is like one of the only things that she has a genuine connection to, that she feels is hers.
Yeah. You know, I was in terms of like similarities between Bloberta and Shapey, this didn't make it into the script, but I was looking at like the you know, like the different I guess it's archetypes of like children. Like you had done that for your discussion of Bloberta and her siblings. I was looking at that, and I think the scapegoat fits very well for both Bloberta and Shapey. The description said it's often the second child. They're both second children. You know, they're like blamed for things. They're generally not treated well, and that can lead to like behavioral problems, like emotional dysregulation, like lashing out. And I think obviously Bloberta learned to bottle things up better than Shapey, but it's possible when she was like a younger child, she was more like Shapey.
I could see that potentially. I do think the scapegoat is an interesting one because there is usually a lot of like actual like unwarranted aggression being pushed onto the child, and I don't think that's necessarily the case for either of them. But it would depend. There's so little that we know about the background and how they were treated in their homes, like overall. Even with Shapey, like we only see so much. Like, but I think somewhere between kind of Invisible Lost Child and Shapey, I think I could see it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we know with Shapey, like, you know, even if they're not like directly with Shapey, even though they're not like directly being like really aggressive with him and blaming things on him, he's present for a lot of the conflicts that like are about him. Like he's there when Clay and Bloberta are fighting about him and maturity. Like and there's probably been more fights like that where he's been the focus of it, and he's been there and he's kind of internalized that. Like even though he seems like he's just sitting there and he's playing and he's, you know, not paying attention, he is paying attention. You know, he seems to be very observant, and like the things he picks up. So he, you know, could internalize that like Bloberta's kind of like apathy towards him, and Clay's pretty outright like dislike of him.
I think we discussed it in one of the previous videos, but I think in a way, like, you know, he definitely knows like a lot more about what's going on. Like, you know, he's kind of, we say, oh, Oral's up there taking notes, but Shapey kind of has like front row seats to the argument, and like they don't even treat him like a person, they treat him like he's an object in the background. Like they don't think he's gonna sit there and absorb what they're saying.
Yeah, no, they really act like he's not there. Like, Clay kicks over the lamp, and it almost falls on Shapey. It's like there's they pay so little attention to him, but he's there and he's listening, and like we get these little hints that he's, you know, that he observes things and he wants to understand things. Like the whole thing of like him taking Oral's Lucky Bible and imitating reading passages. Like he does pick up on what people around him are doing and saying.
Yeah.
Why does Shapey know that Danielle's his father?
The funny answer is vibes, but the
He says that man looks just like me.
I'm on the fence about if you know there was ever any continued connection there, because I feel like Danielle ghosted her pretty soon afterwards. But it's like there's a possibility that they could have like met in passing in more ways than just what we see in the show.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's also a possibility, you know, like when Bloberta got pregnant, like he ghosted her, and then maybe when Shapey's like a baby, maybe he's like, oh, I'm gonna try to like insert myself back into Bloberta's life so I can, you know, keep an eye on Clay, like maybe get an idea of like more things about the house and Clay's routine and like how things are there, because like he keeps track of that stuff. So like maybe he does try to like reinsert himself a bit so he can like get closer, as he says.
I wonder if it's less about something that Shapey himself is feeling inside and more so that he sees how his parents change when Danielle's around.
Oh.
It's not enough that Shapey rejects Clay ever like petting him or being nice to him. He also just is drawn to Danielle in a way that's like he knows. Maybe he doesn't know. Maybe
he gets excited to see Danielle. Like he runs up and hugs him, and he's like reaching for him at the town meeting. We can't really be sure if he actually knows Danielle's his father, but he definitely has some kind of attachment to him. It's just kind of like a question of what that attachment is and what the source of it is.
It could also be that, you know, his parents have very amicable relationships with him, and some, at least on the surface they do. So yeah, it's like, you know, he's a friendly guy with the family, you know. So could be that.
He's like, oh, we like him, we all love him, we all hug him. That's what we do.
He's like, mommy and daddy, they like to touch Danielle, so I'm gonna try to touch him too. It's kind of funny. Like maybe he's just mimicking their behavior. But the interaction in God's image does seem like a little bit different, with him just like reaching for Danielle, kind of unprompted.
Oh yeah, that was definitely I know that that was like the purpose of the joke was like, oh, Shapey reaches for Danielle's his real dad, and he just like kind of slides out of frame.
Goes.
You know, there's got to be something there. Like he, you know, I think it's like an innate sense or something. I don't know. I think that would be funny if like Shapey was just like drawn to him like in orbit.
Yeah. Like Danielle's just that magnetic. Maybe he's like, this man looks exactly like me. I mean, I'm sure Shapey knows what he looks like, so
maybe Shapey's never seen it in a mirror before in his life. Like, we don't know.
I'm sure he has.
I mean, I'm joking, but like
I know personal conversations we've like speculated about Danielle maybe having some further contact with Bloberta after Shapey's born. Like, I don't know how likely that is.
Photo from the album with his note that says that Shapey's his masterpiece.
Yeah, he at least was like egging her on a bit more while she was pregnant, at least. But like, maybe once the baby shot out of her, he was like, "Oh, now I'm gonna well, my work here's done. Time to go for my real goal."
and like
time to celebrate with a pink cigar.
Responsibilities, those are hard. I'm just gonna go chase my man now.
like fatherhood, not unless he can have his man. Like
He's like, I will never. I'm not gonna be in a relationship with a woman raising our son, but you know, if it's my boy, we're good. We're good.
I guess it's possible that Danielle kind of established some kind of contact with Bloberta, maybe when Shapey was like a toddler or something. Because, you know, he's got to do like some recon. He's got to get into the house. He's got to see what you know, what's going on in there now.
I feel like it's probably not. I don't want to say it's not likely, but it would have been when Clay wasn't around, and I feel like Danielle wouldn't want to be around while Clay wasn't around. Right? Like, I'm trying to think of how it would work.
No, it's the opposite. He'd want to get in there while Clay isn't around so that he can gather information.
You know, steal some underwear. I don't know.
Clay's unwashed underwear.
Well, it had to be the unwashed pair?
I mean, he's not going to take the clean ones. He's crazy.
Yeah, maybe.
No, but you're right. I mean, at that point, Danielle was kind of not ready to make full contact with Clay. He wasn't like introducing himself to Clay or anything, so he's not going to go over to Clay's house when he's there.
Planted the seed, let everything else do the work. Nature ran its course, and then he just went from there, you know?
Like, the universe was gonna do its thing. He did some numerology, ran the numbers.
He manifested a baby, and the rest is history.
He's like, I'll be back in approximately 7 years when the planets align. When the stars are out, I will make my move. Dick has to be out as well. When the alignment of the dick is at a 40-degree angle with the wall, that is when I can make my move.
Oh my god. Wow.
And he was so passive in that first meeting. Like, he was both passive and so intrusively weird at the same time.
I think he was trying to, like, get in Clay's head and mess with him. He was like, okay, if Clay isn't, like, suspecting that his wife is cheating on him, I better make it more obvious.
He's like Clay is crashing out in the bar because he can't remember conceiving this child, and he's assuming the child's his. He's like, I gotta do something.
I gotta make him realize it.
I actually had a lapse in my memory there, and I was thinking of the first time they met in the chronological, like in the first episode. I was thinking of the first episode because I forgot that they do meet again in before all.
Yeah, I mean, that's also like a very like intrusive yet somewhat passive.
It is. It's so weird
because like he doesn't like introduce himself or like do anything to actually establish a connection, yet he does like the weirdest.
I'd give it another shake.
It's just insane.
Yeah,
and he's just like, okay.
He's being honest.
In conclusion, we don't know if Shapey knows Danielle is his father, but he might.
With how weird all the circumstances around stop frames are, we don't fucking know.
They're whack. Who knows?
So, on to Block.
Yeah, so Block is like Shapey and Block are so interesting because what we see of Block is he seems to be kind of like this exact copy of Shapey, and that's how he's perceived by almost all of the characters. Like Oral knows that's not Shapey. Clay also knows, but he doesn't really like care or acknowledge. And like even at times, like Oral slips up. Like he calls him Shapey at one point, and then he's like, oh, he corrects himself, and he's like, I mean Block. So like for a lot of this series, like they seem like these just like carbon copies that have like just different hair and t-shirt colors, but like
I feel like there's a different personality.
Yeah,
I think it's like a trick question almost. I don't know how to say it. It's to subvert your expectations. Like you think at a glance, yes, these people are like carbon copies, and the one thing that makes them different is like their prayer.
Yeah, it's like I think Block is different than Shapey, and like ways that were unexplored, obviously, because of the show's cancellation. And I think
they were hinted at. They were hinted at. So, you know, for instance, when Art is first introducing his family, he introduces Block before he introduces Christina.
Good evening. It certainly is.
I'm Art Posabule. This is my wife, Poppet, our little boy Block.
Yeah.
But Clay does not even bother to introduce Shapey. So that implies that that Block is Art's son and he's not Poppet's son.
Yeah, because it's like, because like when you think about like Clay, Oral, and Shapey, like Clay is always going to introduce Oral first. Like, he's proud of Oral, he loves Oral, but then Shapey, he just wants to pretend Shapey's not there. But for Art to introduce Block first, that really says something that's like a very stark difference between them, like right from the get-go.
I think it also, I think a factor of it, I do like overall agree with this. I do think another factor of that though is just because Christina is female, but like it's in Moralton, like I wouldn't put them past it to always introduce the son first, but it feels almost like he's like proud of him.
Like he says, like, this is my son, Block. Like,
He might have said our son, actually, in which case liar.
but like even if he does say our son, like still more than Clay is ever gonna do for Shapey. Like our little boy Block.
Always
That's-
with Clay's eyebrows.
Clay was flirting.
That's what I'm saying. It was a 4-way swingers situation where none of the orientations were lined up, so it wasn't going to work out.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, but just in that moment, it's established that Art has a connection to Block that Clay does not have with Shapey, which suggests that Art is Block's father, which would mean that he cheated on Poppet with another woman. And if we're assuming that woman is a Danielle parallel, that would mean Poppet is having a thing with that woman.
Or if they moved, maybe they were trying to get away from the thing with that woman.
Ooh,
Yeah.
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 Yeah. The Posabules, like, we have so many theories about them. And I just think there's so much more, like, so many people are just like, they're just the carbon copies of the Puppingtons. And, like, I think that's so boring. It's so much more interesting if you, like, dig in a bit and you think about
Then you
how,
can
like,
kind of, you can basically gender invert the situation happening with the Puppingtons and see how that changes it.
And it makes it so interesting to have like just this different perspective and these parallels. It's like there are similarities and they line up, but the overall story just changes so much, like thinking of what it would be like to see the perspective from Christina's point of view. And how
I
she
think
has,
that
like,
Christina's life is worse. It's just worse.
yeah. We'll do, like, a larger Posabule video at some point, but some theories that we have is that Art is, you know, like, people, like, on the surface, like, Clay wants to be like this, like, traditional, like, masculine head of the household, man of the family or whatever, and he's not. And we think that that's like what Art is. And, like, in my mind, like, he's very much like Don Draper from Mad Men. It's like he's very, like, masculine man, like, he has a lot of affairs, like, he is what, like, Clay wants to, like, to
Wishes that
project.
he was. He's the image, like, what the image that Clay puts up as a facade is like what Art actually is.
Yeah.
And Poppet is meanwhile this unfulfilled housewife, and she feels a little more tapped out than Bloberta in a way, which is saying something.
like we think Bloberta doesn't pay attention to her children. Well, just wait till you see Poppet.
Yeah, she, when Bloberta went to pick up Shapey from the Posabules' home, Poppet looks out the window. She doesn't even come out, and she just slams the door when Block doesn't come back.
Yeah, and Block doesn't even he doesn't even try to go back.
Yeah, and I think
that feels like she resents Block the way that Clay resents Shapey.
Yeah, because like when Bloberta calls Poppet about switching their sons back, Bloberta calls Shapey her baby, but Poppet doesn't show that same level of affection for Block.
Block is not her baby.
And, like, in the Lord's Prayer episode, like, I don't think Poppet even really acknowledges Block at any point.
Yeah, we don't really see, like, I feel like enough of...
Well, she's, like, touching his shoulders when they're going in, but she seems more interested in looking at their house.
She's pretty excited to go see the cleaning supplies. I mean, it's really a shame we don't get more of their dynamic, because I think Oral's counterpart being Christina, a girl, I think that like drastically changes the dynamics within the family.
Like, to think that people could think that you just like swap it as if the dynamics would be the same. Like, Christina would not be given the same level of urgency from her father that like Oral is given from Clay. It's just not going to happen because of the way that their society is.
If anything, he probably doesn't even respect her enough to try and teach her lessons. He just spanks her and lets her leave.
Well, I think, I mean, you could look at this as like when Clay spanks Oral, like he really is looking at it as like, I am teaching him a lesson. Like it's
it's mechanical.
Violence for the sake of violence. It's always followed by a talk, by a lecture. He's like, this is like a learning moment. And like, obviously corporal punishment like isn't okay. It's not a good way to teach your children, but like in Clay's mind, that's how he's approaching it. And it's a lot less, I think, violent than, you know, if you're thinking about what the family dynamic might look like if Oral was a girl. I think that is going to be a lot rougher and is not going to have that level of respect. And I think I like to like watch, I like on YouTube, like to watch like documentaries and like analysis videos and stuff about like Christian fundamentalists and stuff. Like I just as like a channel recommendation, Fundy Fridays is awesome if you want to like really dig into like Christian fundamentalist stuff. There's this one video I watched about like purity balls and purity culture and purity rings and like kind of like how the father kind of controls the daughter in that. And it's like this really weird, like domineering, almost sexual dynamic.
It's gotta be. And yeah, like I know exactly what you're talking about. And like, I can just like imagine how that would play out in the show and just be so icky.
Yeah. And I can really imagine that being a major thing in Art and Christina's relationship where you know,
it already is, because you know in Close Face, when Oral goes to visit, the way he grabs her and then slams the door in Oral's face it reeks of that. You know. I feel like if we had gotten like a more Posabule centric episode, we would have seen that.
And I do think it's interesting to think about what Shapey might have been through in that household.
Yes. Oh my!
Because you know we see Block doesn't want to go back. He hangs on to Bloberta. He wants to stay with the Puppingtons, and it's like we already know the Puppingtons household is fucked so bad. So it's like what's going on in the Posabule house that he doesn't even want to go back.
I don't know if I've asked this before. Like, do we think that Poppet like wasn't like breastfeeding Block? Like if she wasn't pregnant, she would.
No, I definitely think she wouldn't. She, like, you know, if she didn't have the baby and if she wasn't consistently breastfeeding the kid, then she wouldn't still be producing anything. So, yeah.
And I think that Shapey not being breastfed by Poppet might be kind of important. Him realizing that it's not breastfeeding he misses. It's his mom. He wants a connection with Bloberta.
True.
Because like he's like, okay, I don't have either of these things anymore, and he would kind of come to the realization that like, oh, okay, this is what I'm actually craving, and like that's so sad to think about. Like Shapey must have gone through like so much like character development at the Posabules, and like especially because we think about, and again, like the season 3 timeline is kind of fucked because of the cancellation. But when Shapey says his first full sentence to Bloberta, this is, I think, pretty shortly after he comes home. So it's like, yeah, he might have been talking with Block and maybe learning and practicing with Block, but he might have also been talking to himself a lot at the Posabule house and developing his speech skills there. And it's like, we don't really know for certain because, again, the timeline is so screwed up. So like maybe there is more time in there. So we can't say for sure.
The fact that Shapey was treated like such an object that we didn't even get a like scene of him at the Posabules at all is so sad to me.
You know, we were supposed to get more, but the way it is and what they had to cut, it's more just like this gag of like, oh, Shapey got switched out for Block, and Block is basically Shapey, haha, and then like he comes home.
It didn't get to breathe enough in season 3 because season 2 it was still being like treated like a joke, I guess.
Yeah.
What I detest is everybody assuming that the Puppingtons adopted Block because I don't think they adopted him.
It doesn't make any sense. It's like do people come to this conclusion because there's a picture of Block and Shapey on the wall? That's Christina's brother. Like,
Like this is just one of the side effects of it getting canceled where it was, because they didn't have time to just leave him with the rest of the family. So
and like they couldn't just like randomly get rid of Block, not have him be there anymore.
If anything, you know, having Block with the Puppingtons would have left for, like, first of all, more development for Shapey and more for them to grow and learn from each other. And it would have been a hook for a future episode where we reunite with the Posabules again.
And this is just kind of like a silly aside because it's something we've talked about in conversations before with each other. It's like we've talked about, like, kind of, you know, this back and forth of trying to get Block back home, and, you know, Block kind of going back and forth because Block doesn't want to stay there, but Block doesn't want to stay with the Posabules, but the Puppingtons don't want to keep him. So it's kind of this back and forth, and like the communication is all between Bloberta and Art because they're the ones that actually care about, to some extent, those kids, and it ends with the one-off Art and Bloberta.
That's what I imagined, was that, you know, Art was going to come back for his trophy child.
Yeah. And then,
you guys thought they'd have an affair?
No, one-off hookup. A horrible idea.
I don't like that. Sorry.
It is a horrible idea, but also, like,
because if things were to go the way that they were planned, like, Mama would have been getting her proper man.
No, you're so right. But also, I think it's such a funny thing to think about.
I think it is interesting to think about, but I just don't. I don't want them near each other.
That would be it would be the only coupling among those four where the orientations are compatible.
Yeah. And like for that reason alone, it would be an interesting thing to explore. It's like the version of Clay that can be attracted to her and the version of Papa that can be attracted to him. And they have this one horrible hookup. And then they're like, that was awful, never again.
We're speculating.
Speculating, not canon.
What would have happened was that she would have had the affair with Paper Mouth.
Yeah. And that's the timeline we like. Don't worry, Senna. That's our preferred Bloberta relationship.
Yeah.
You just left.
I left the call for comedic effect. I said, don't worry.
I'm trying to assure you that Roger and Bloberta are our favorite.
I heard it all.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me. Y'all could fucking hate it and I wouldn't care. I would still be on that boat.
Oh my god.
It's okay. Blobbermouth Nation is population. Senna. And I will hold it on my back.
Carry it on your back.
If there's not a branch of the fandom you want, you make it.
But, like, the worst part of, like, an Art Bloberta affair would be the fact that if they got together, then, like, Oral and Christina are going to be, like, step siblings.
No.
It would be so
horrible.
toxic. No, I don't think they'd get on at all. Like,
they wouldn't. It would just literally, like, I literally, like, in the event that it did happen, I think it would be, like, literally, like, a one-off, like, sexual thing, and then they would never contact each other again. They would be like, take your child, like, we're going our separate ways.
it's funny. I just don't know what to say about it. Because I remember asking that question before in the chat, like how different would it be if they buried their opposites instead, and everyone agreed unanimously it was worse for everybody. Well, not necessarily. I don't know if it was worse for everybody, but it was definitely still just as bad, just a different flavor of bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be worse because, like, now you have this combination of people that, like, actually can have, like, sexual attraction to each other. I think that adds, like...
But then it turns out that their personalities are just incompatible.
Yeah. And just a horrible nightmare, like...
So it's like, even if they could have been attracted to each other, it wasn't going to work out.
Yeah. We should be glad that Bloberta married a gay man.
We should be glad. We should be glad is insane.
They would have had more children if they were.
Yeah. Oh God. That's terrifying.
Imagine just a bunch of Orals and Christinas.
Oh no. The world would end. Anyway.
I hold that Poppet Posabule is just like a particularly savage and vicious lesbian.
Yes.
That is my theory, and I stand with it.
Like, I mean, that's the only thing that makes sense to me. We'll do a full Posabule video at some point and, like, really go in depth.
We gotta. I mean,
yeah.
we already got so much to say about them here.
Oh, yeah. I think we had good, like, little starter pack of, like, the views. of how we see them.
Headcanon starter pack.
We'll do a full speculative deep dive where we just talk about what we imagine them to be.
Yeah, because like you think this
put
was
the
a lot.
disclaimer. Don't worry, the video will circulate around the fandom, and in like a year, everyone will be talking about it like it's scripture and that it's canon.
You know what? They should, because our ideas are great.
Yeah, why not? I mean, if people believe in Stephanie Bendy, they better believe in lesbian pop at Posabule.
Yeah, like come on. Like,
And that has more canon basis to me than Stephanie and Bendy.
Yes.
Is there anything else we wanted to for the discussion?
The only thing I wanted to bring up was that offshot thought that I had about, and I don't really know where we would have to put it in like the overall, but like just that thought that I had kind of had when we were talking before of like potentially part of the reason that like, Bloberta ignores Shapey and doesn't really like try to interact with him in certain ways is because he is a boy, and in their society like boys are meant to be brought up by their fathers.
That's a good point.
And she just she wouldn't have any like agency. Like she doesn't have the agency in her position as a wife. We know that she's very much like into like being in those roles, filling those roles. Like, you know, Clay has to fill his fatherly roles, she has to fill her
she is that roles. TikTok trad wife.
Don't let Bloberta discover TikTok.
I mean, she would get dragged on TikTok for her cooking.
No, she would get so much rage bait engagement. She would get so much.
She has like the most popular rage bait cooking channel.
But on her end, it's completely earnest.
Yeah. She's like, I'm doing so well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you that like she really does adhere to these traditional ideals. And, you know, we've spoken before about like, that we think she kind of expected Danielle to step up and be a father figure to Shapey, and, you know, whether that involved her leaving Clay and going to him, like, you know, you can argue that, but I don't think she expected that she would be Shapey's only present, like, parental figure, and she doesn't know what to do with that.
Like, the only way she knows how to interact with him is to treat him like a baby.
So she just, you know, she doesn't have the emotional capacity to connect with him past that. Like, she won't be able to do the motherhood thing. So instead, and she can't be a father. So instead, she just acts like he's a baby and just continues to fulfill her need as a mother.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably all she did with Oral is like breastfeed him, and I feel like Clay was like, this is my child.
I don't think Clay had to be in the room when she was breastfeeding Oral. Like, no, you'll choke him. Let me hold him. Like, and he just like squints so he doesn't have to see the boob.
Oh my god, that's in character.
Honestly, I'd imagine that Oral was bottle fed.
Oh,
really?
That could. Just imagining him like pump her.
He'd be like, nudity is evil. First of all, put that shit back on.
He'd be like, okay.
He would have her do the pumping in private, and then he feeds Oral from the bottle. Oh man.
That's my theory, that he was like inseparable from baby Oral, and then it got weird. And then he was like, okay, I'm done. Bye, baby.
Bye, baby.
He's like, you started talking and this got weird.
You're not supposed to talk. You're a baby. You're my projection of all my ideas onto you. You don't get to have your own ideas.
Oh my god. Yeah. You know, and if you think that's the case, so like Bloberta's really never done any significant parenting. So like, of course she doesn't know how to parent Shapey.
She's like good at like doing the typical things. Like, it's not like her kids are starving or anything. Like,
no, she's performing the roles. She just isn't performing.
She's not emotionally available at all.
She doesn't feed them emotionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they're fed, they're clothed. I mean, with Shapey, you can argue about the hygiene stuff. Where's his toothbrush?
He ate it.
Shapey brushes his teeth by like chewing on a bar of soap. That's how he brushes them.
That Clay was like he was hosing him down in the front yard, and my thought is that Bloberta told him to bathe Shapey, and that was like
that's what he came up with.
He's like, that thing's not getting in the tub.
Oh my god. I think it's too dirty.
And play with toxic chemicals at the other time.
Don't
He's
spill
so
it.
silly. He's so silly when he does that, right? Like I single-heartedly believe Clay. I single-heartedly believe Clay has like given him so many dangerous objects.
He's like, yeah, die.
Yeah, this is the new toy for you, buddy. And then it's like,
I want you dead.
And then he just will not die. He's a cockroach.
like
And imagining Poppet being like that with Block is also funny.
Poppet and her like arsenal of cleaning supplies. She's used them all on him and none of them have worked.
She's probably chloroformed him at some point.
Oh my god.
All right, bedtime.
That's what happens. If she's
bedtime.
I mean, hell, maybe that's what happens to the poor kid half the time. Don't want to deal with that.
Oh, poor Block.
I just feel really bad for Block coming out of this conversation. Like, I feel bad for everybody, but
It's like, at least Shapey is like kind of almost
Like-
maybe like.
Shapey has at least like a bed. Like Block probably has like a cardboard tent.
I mean, look, so
Actually,
Clay,
that's
there
not
was
true.
at least a little bit of.
That's probably not true. If Art favors Block, Block probably has a really extravagant room, but he has no emotional connection, and he's probably like to his mom at least.
Shapey would have been in a really nice room there.
Like that's my theory now, as I'll have my 2 cents in the mix. Art like is like just like vapidly buying his son like a bunch of shit because he has like ownership over him.
Or would he be sharing a room with Christina because girls don't get to have privacy?
Oh yeah.
I almost think he would want them to have separate rooms because like I don't know, like a girl and a boy shouldn't share the same space. But yeah, like it's interesting if you think about like say Block does have this really nice room. Like if you think about Shapey getting switched and he goes to this place where he actually has a really nice room with lots of toys and like a bed with that actually has blankets and pillows. And like at first that would be really exciting. And maybe he'd think, you know, like, oh, this is better. Like my life is better. And then he doesn't
But
have
Art-
any of the things that made him, you know, connected before.
Yeah, it's like from a lack of complete like material, I guess, fulfillment.
So
like
you know, it's not like Art would be, because all that Shapey was really getting from Bloberta was like the breastfeeding. But for Art, you know, I think that he would be giving him like physical objects, like physically providing for him. But there's no hugs involved or anything.
Yes, yeah, that's what I was kind of trying to get at. Like, it's like I also kind of, I guess, like wonder how much he would prevalent, because like with Christina, like you have to assume that Poppet is like her main, like the main person that she's.
I think so.
Because there's no reason for Art. So like, yes, he disciplines her, but like that's, I think, the extent of where that goes, and he just like is very like sheltering of her, I guess, because that's his daughter.
I mean, also if you think about Poppet being like analogous to Clay,
she's trying to teach her like the proper place of a woman in Christian society.
So then Block would be the one that's getting like all of his attention, but I don't think he would be like a super active father. He would just be like, here, you know, kids want things, right? So like my son's gonna have all these things, but he wouldn't be playing sports with them or anything.
No quality time.
And if he talks to him, it's probably just like feeding him like these like toxically
Rhetoric, yeah.
toxic masculine like ideas and things about like what a man should be, and it's like way too much for a kid that age to hear.
Wait. Okay, so you know, Bloberta spent like a really long time not even looking at Block. And she would just assume that he was Shapey.
It wasn't, yeah.
Presumably, like, it would have been similar in the other house where, like, Art probably wasn't really looking at Shapey and not really noticing.
Yeah.
So maybe more talking at him.
Like he's like, I have a son. And it's not so much he wanted a son to emotionally like connect with. He wanted a son as more of like a legacy kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like I need a son who will carry on my name and bloodline, and I just need him to be molded into like the kind of man I want him to be, and like
because Christina's not going to carry his name. So
yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't really like ever look at Block. It was more just him talking at him while doing other things. These poor children.
Yep, they're all just in like an inescapable hellscape. Their parents like have to settle their own bullshit before they can live like halfway normal lives.
Challenge level impossible.
I am selfish, I am broken, I am cruel. I am to you. Do you ever think of me and my 2 hands and wonder why they never soothed your fever?
Okay. So one of the first questions that we got. Okay, so we'll go from oldest to newest.
Yeah, that's fair.
Question 1. Do you guys like any of the nameless background characters? E.g. the black-haired woman Putty sits next to while he's complaining about how he can't reinvent himself and be fruitful and multiply.
Okay, I want to take this first. Okay, what I want to say is it's not a black-haired woman, it's a black-haired man, and the episode is the Blessed Union. So let's start there. And my favorite background character is that man, and that man is Greg Succession.
That's our little in joke. It's what we call him.
Yeah, his real name is Ken Awkwarding, but he looks exactly like Greg from Succession. And we'll put up pictures on the screen here so you guys can see the resemblance.
Doesn't Dottie almost assault him in what was it? Abstinence?
I like that you have time to be with me and not have to go out and support me.
Oh,
Oh, and I love that I don't hate you.
oh,
Aha! Reel it in, loose one.
oh,
Oh.
oh.
I think so.
I think they have like an awkward. I think they have an awkward like date or something.
Yeah, Dottie's a menace. Yeah. So he's my favorite background character. Everyone should watch Succession. Yes. What about you guys?
Nameless background characters.
There's the purple-haired old lady.
If they have to be nameless, like, because Ken Awkwarding's not nameless, so this whole thing was a sham.
I mean, he might as well be nameless.
Okay, the only nameless character that I can think of is like one of the girls who was in Bloberta's friend group in Help. She had like short hair and was wearing like blue and white. It was short black hair. She was very cute. I'm gonna go with her.
Oh, one of the ones that stands out to me a lot is the one long-haired character in the background in Help. She's like a hat on, and she has long blonde hair.
Yeah, she's so cute.
She's the only character with long hair.
Yeah, like that's like down, not like in a ponytail or anything like that. So I thought it was really interesting. It looks like banana peels.
Oh, and that red-haired couple. There's like this red-haired woman. I don't really care about the husband, but you know, she's cute.
I also really like she goes to oral school. I don't know if she's in his class. It's the girl with like the Princess Leia buns.
Oh my gosh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
some of those kids
so
have
cute.
Some of those kids have really unique hairstyles. Like there's a girl with really big like pigtails as well.
Yeah.
Shout out to all the background characters. Shout out to all the Doughy clones too, because when I was watching an episode, I noticed just how many Doughy clones there were.
Oh
they just keep reusing him.
Okay, who wants to read the next one?
I often think about Shapey and Block's future since we never got their episode, RIP, and a thought I've been coming back to often is whether Shapey would eventually try to reconnect with Danielle or vice versa. With the way Danielle's arc left off, I wouldn't consider it too unlikely that he might reach out in the future or be responsive if Shapey did so, but I'm not a huge Danielle connoisseur, so I don't know, lol. I'd be interested to hear your guys' thoughts. I think it's basically guaranteed with the way that we see Shapey constantly, like, reaching for Danielle, that it's not something that's gonna go away. I think he is gonna reach out.
Yeah,
He's not going to be able to avoid him.
He deserves answers, first of all.
Oh yeah, and I also think like as Shapey gets older, he's probably gonna feel a lot of complicated feelings about Danielle. Like he's probably gonna feel some anger, some sadness, and like I think it would be very, very reasonable for him to want to, you know, confront Danielle or try to have at least some kind of relationship with him.
Attack.
Yeah, he should.
They can have one of those YouTube SmackDown versus Raw, whatever the fuck they are, battles. Like they're not professional enough for the real ones, but they can have the YouTube ones.
I think Shapey has a good chance of winning.
Yeah, we have a theory.
Don't delete anything.
We have a theory that Danielle can't fight. He just cares about looking like he can fight. So that's part of why he like cares about like being like really like athletic looking and strong. So he looks like someone that can fight, so no one will bother him, but he can't actually fight.
No technique, I guess, except in bed.
And that's all that matters, right?
For him.
For him.
Looking good and fucking good. Sorry.
That's what he cares about.
Anyway, guys. What do you guys think the most depressing episode is?
Honor.
Honor is really depressing.
I don't find it as uplifting as most of the fandom does, because I see it as like a cauterized limb of an otherwise really great story that was like emerging.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah.
Honestly, true.
And we get this tacked on ending that people are like, oh, it's so nice and happy and hopeful, but it's like, no, it's not, because according to that ending, Clay and Bloberta are together forever and miserable, and I hate that. That's very depressing to me.
Y'all are mad that Oral was shot in the leg. I'm mad they shot the story in the leg.
Yeah.
Shot the story in the leg.
Because even not just thinking about Clay and Bloberta like as individuals, that they don't deserve to be stuck with each other forever, no matter what some kind of, as I would say, emotionally stunted people tend to think. It's painful to Oral and his family. They don't get to see their grandparents, and obviously there's an argument that they shouldn't get to see their grandchildren because of the way that they treat their own children, which there is an argument for that, yes. However, if they have made any attempt to improve, or if they would treat their grandchildren any better, we never get to know that. So there is a possibility that Oral, in his kindness and his love for his parents, would take his grandchildren to see this couple that's just constantly miserable, with no buffer of any children whatsoever. Exactly. And if they have the picture up there, the kids are going to ask questions even if they don't get to see them.
I mean, I can't even think to that point, because we don't even know what leads up to that. We don't even know, like, because there were character arcs that were just completely removed. There was, Arthur Puppington was going to be introduced into the story, and they were never able to do that. And that's what depresses me, I guess.
It's just we're so like deprived of all the full breadth of the vision. It's just yeah, now I'm getting depressed thinking about it. Great question, Anonymous.
Whenever
probably
I think about
expected
Honor,
us to say something else.
Yeah.
All right. Do you guys think Putty is good at his job?
What exactly?
Yes and no.
Because what exactly is his job? I mean, we know he's the Reverend, but what does that really mean?
I think that he as a person has some reprehensible qualities, and they leak into his job, and that is like bad. Yeah. I also think that, if he goes into it thinking, okay, I actually need to be a leader to these people because that's what they expect of me, and puts some effort in and says something good. And he said, like, he's had 2 good sermons in the entire show, and one of them was an honor, so I hate it. But
also, part of his job is going to the school and feeding the children misinformation. It's one thing to extrapolate on theology in a church, because that's where it's what it's for, but to then go and change the course of a child's life by running a class where they can be made to feel like they are mentally disabled is horrible. So it's like, I forget how the quote goes, where it's like the consequences of a system is its intended purpose.
Yeah. But so also, like, he's up there spewing garbage about how having white skin makes you better than other people, and also about how being gay makes you evil, and like that's the job that he's doing. So what do you think?
Yeah. And like if he's not like saying like bigoted stuff, he's up there being self-pitying and using the congregation as his therapist.
He is. Some of the Moraltons don't even think he's doing a good job, and he's literally saying what they want him to say.
I don't know what this rosy version of Putty is that the fandom has, where ultimately he loves everyone and cares about them, but because he doesn't.
We've seen him be racist to children minutes, I forget if it's like minutes before or after he's being lovey-dovey to his daughter.
No, you don't get it because he's saying close face afterwards, so obviously he's all inclusive.
Fuck them kids. Like, Jesus.
Man,
Oh my god. Yeah, he has potential to be good at his job, but
Yeah.
he's not good at it. Okay.
He would
What would Putty post on TikTok?
he would do stitches.
He wouldn't actually make any posts himself, but he would comment on girls' thirst traps.
Yes, and I feel like if he did ever deign to do a video, he would stitch a video of like a woman explaining something or like doing an obvious thirst trap and just like do a thumbs up or just like post it. Or he's just staring at the screen.
or one of those people that do like reacts, but they're just sitting there in the corner of the screen.
Yes,
it would be like that for girls' thirst traps.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what he'd be doing on TikTok.
how do you think Tinder or Grindr would work out for Clay?
Well, first of all, they don't have smartphones, so
Yeah.
not well.
But if
get
they
stoned.
did, now if they did, it would probably work out like that promotional short for Before Oral where Scott Adsit walks in on him about to do the thing, and somehow Danielle ends up there. Every time that Clay would end up having like a fling with someone, Danielle's gonna end up there. And he's gonna be stalking him throughout. So it's like they're a package deal for people, and I don't know if that's better or worse.
It's
And
Danielle.
Scott Adset's always there too.
Danielle would
and his 35 ghost accounts.
Danielle would have a way to like he would be like DMing everyone Clay has DM'd, like he would just know. He would be able to match with them.
Oh my god. Yeah, he'd be going to their houses. I'm being like, not.
Okay, that's not how I see it. I think that he'd love to join in.
Yeah, I mean, three's a party.
Oh my god.
Plus, it's also an opportunity for, like, to have it confirmed to him that, you know, Clay isn't just... That Clay won't be unfulfilled by Danielle being his only homosexual relationship.
Yeah.
It's a way of Danielle's ego being stroked and a sense of security.
I mean, if he gets over the thing, then, you know, it's party time.
All right, this one. Would you guys ever be interested in opening up a Discord server or something of the sort just for people to join? So for this one, like, we understand why we've gotten so many requests for this, but the answer is just no. It's a lot of work to run a Discord server. It opens up a lot of like potential like problems and conflicts, and we just don't have any interest in managing that. So we're very sorry, but you know, we do really want you guys to, you know, be able to have a community with each other and ask us questions. So, you know, you guys can always, you know, leave comments. We read all of them. We respond to some if, like, you know, they're particularly thought-provoking. You can leave questions here on our Neospring. Yeah, but we will not be opening up a Discord server.
You worded that very well.
Yeah, we really don't have the time to do any of that. We do have... What is all that crinkling noise?
Sorry.
Okay, but yeah, we do have full-time jobs outside of this, so it, you know, just making these videos, it takes up a bit of our free time, so yeah.
Okay, the next question.
Do we really
If
have
the
to answer?
citizens of Moralton were put in the Hunger Games, who would win? My answer is Shapey because he's apparently indestructible.
You're right.
They try
I
to
don't know
kill
who
him,
would
he
win. I
die.
know who would die first. It would be Putty.
Yeah.
I don't know the rules of the game, so I'm just gonna agree with you guys.
He'd be like, we have to... They put us in a rainy arena. We have to huddle together for warmth, and then he gets stabbed.
Clay would just lie down and die. He's not gonna...
He'd be like, good, this is my opportunity.
You know, what would be funny if that nobody ever kills him? He just keeps surviving, even though he wants to die so bad.
Accidental winner. No. It's just him and Shapey at the end, and then like Shapey like bites his throat out.
Oh my god.
That's deserved. He already got Danielle.
Yeah.
I don't have comments on that because I have no clue about how it works, so I'm just gonna move on. How much blame Here, you read it, Wes. Read it dramatically.
How much blame should Oral's parents, Clay and Bloberta, shoulder for his struggles? Well, you know, I think that parents should shoulder all the blame for every struggle their child goes through because, you know, they didn't ask to be born.
Yeah. And obviously children never create any problems for themselves. Ever.
Yeah. Children are never responsible for any of their actions, even if they go around like impregnating all the women on Abstinence Lane.
We're gonna get so much flame for this.
Oh, yeah.
But like, okay, so I mean, obviously this is like a complicated issue, and like Clay and Bloberta do hold some responsibility for, you know, Oral's I think my roommate's singing.
It's okay, I can't hear it.
Tell her to sing louder.
I think Clay and Bloberta do have some responsibility for Oral's missteps, because, you know, like ultimately they're the ones who are, you know, teaching him and instilling these values in him. But on the other hand, Oral often takes things so far, like beyond what his parents are like telling him to do, instructing him to do. Like, I mean, like, if you tell your kid they should finish everything on their plate, why would you think they're gonna go start drinking and selling their pee? Why would you think
If you tell your kid a white lie about where babies come from, why do you think they'd suddenly go out and do that?
Yeah. It just...
So it's like, yeah,
I would
Clay
say
and Bloberta like reflect on their parenting abilities, yes, but Oral is doing some wild shit out there.
We see in the show that almost every adult in town feels some sort of responsibility, because they all give him advice.
Yeah, so should all of the town people of Morrilton be shouldering his struggles? How far does the scope go?
I mean, I think
God's
that
fault.
Anonymous, who asked this question, you should probably rewatch Innocence and form your own opinions on this.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Don't let us tell us. We're just funny talking puppet people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Oral's unwavering... Oh, go ahead, Glam, because you didn't get to read any yet.
Is Oral's unwavering faith in God a strength or a weakness? I love this question. For me personally, I don't like to see, maybe I've said this before, but I don't like to see bad traits or bad, you know, aspects of a personality. I think every trait has good or bad applications. And, like, you know, Beepus Bonkus,
I won't be silly during the serious questions, sorry.
No, we see that Oral's faith obviously gets him into a lot of trouble, but it's part of the reason that he sees the good in everyone, and that he always tries, even if he's doing horrible shit, he genuinely always thinks that he's doing the right thing.
I think not great, though.
Yeah, which is not great, but like, there are definitely characters who are fully aware that they're doing horrible things and are doing them anyways.
I think as long as he can find a good balance in his life between his faith and, like, his, you know, his principles in life, which I think Oral is capable of doing that. Like, I think it could be a strength to him, but I think that perception of that could also be dependent on the person. Like, some people will always view religion as a weakness.
Yeah,
and that's part of... Sorry, go ahead.
I personally think as Oral gets older and he learns more about, like, the world as it actually is, and meets more people outside of that bubble, I think he's going to, like, get that more balanced perception of the world, and his faith will be something that's a strength to him, and not like this thing that he inadvertently uses to hurt others.
Except because two things. First off, yeah, that's kind of what I meant, because obviously thinking that you're always doing the right thing is not a good thing. However, because of that, when Oral is shown that he's hurting someone or that his actions are negatively affecting other people, he feels remorse and regret for that. And secondly, exactly what you just said is a wonderful point. And, you know, you guys know that's all why I'm always dick riding so hard for Holy Visage, because I think that Oral getting to see other people's religions and their values is incredibly important for his character, and is such a core demonstration of part of the show's message.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Honestly, I felt like the Praying Bee episode did it better, but that's just me.
I think they're both good. Like, I think it's good for Oral to. I mean, like, I like the way Praying did it better, because I don't really like the gross out humor, but I think both episodes are important in showing Oral meet these different people with different worldviews, and I think he you know, the way each situation goes for him, I think he learns something kind of different from each of them.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also, like, I forget how exactly it goes in the praying bee. Like, is Stephanie like a practicing Buddhist or something, or does she just give him the meditation thing?
I like to headcanon her as like a practicing Buddhist, but like
because that's really something that makes them both good to me, is that it's one thing to learn a new coping mechanism, so to speak, and another to learn about a value of a religion from a person who practices it.
Yeah, because that's a good point, because we don't know if Stephanie's a practicing Buddhist. Like she might just like have like that stuff for like meditative purposes without like actually practicing the other like tenets of that religion. So I think it is important that there's that episode with Dr. Chosenberg where he does meet a like practicing Jewish man. Thank you for watching episode 7 of Morrilton University. We hope you enjoyed this Shapey deep dive. Let us know what you think in the comments. We love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed our video, like and subscribe for more moral oral analyses and content. We also want to do some member shoutouts. Shout out to John Ward Lover, Theo Garcia, Shaw.Dizzle, and Western Monk. If you'd like to help support our channel, we offer memberships that give you early access to videos, exclusive emojis, and membership badges. Check out our Neospring if you'd like to ask us a question. We will answer it in a future video. And keep an eye out for our upcoming videos. We're working on a Freudian analysis of nesting, and our final Picking Apart the Puppingtons video, which will focus on everyone's favorite Christian, Oral Puppington.